what we're seeing is with countries restricting access to the accelerator chip, right? A sort of AI nationalism, small yard, high fences. What would you say to that? How will we kind of, it's sort of like an arms race, and we'll get to that a little bit, but what do you think about this AI nationalism that we're kind of seeing?
I find it very unfortunate that we're in that situation. I mean, one can understand, given the geopolitical rivalries that exist, that countries might not want to help their rivals overtake them in technology. And it's an important question, is that going to hold back the development of other countries who have no part in this fight? I think probably not. If you said where are the most important applications for this kind of AI in helping the development of the global south, for example, one would say in helping to deliver education, because I think in this decade, if there's one big thing we can do for the world with AI, it's to develop technology allowing these systems to act as individual tutors for children. In many countries, education only is for first and second grade, and even then parents have to pay for it. So many children really have no access to education at all. And so you could see actually quite rapid leapfrogging, where there may be some countries who have better quality education than the United States or Europe, because now all their children have individual tutors. And those tutors are very knowledgeable. Hopefully they're designed to be very helpful and to accelerate and enhance and ensure that each child's potential is realized. And that would be great. But,
I'm going to push you a little bit on that one,
sure.
Right? Because I've heard this. Microsoft and Satya Nadella have been saying, isn't it the greatest power of AI? Every child can now have a tutor. But the places, the global south, which is where we need it most because they don't have access to schools, are not part of the data set. For example, in India is only 1% of the data that is being fed into the systems right now. And the access that we have to the chips is again 1%. And that's probably where we need the personal tutors. So how do you get personal tutors that actually relate to the children and are able to teach the children what we need them to have culturally as well in the right context?
Yeah. So I think it's correct to say that the content, what we want children to learn, is a mixture of universal content, mathematics, literacy in a particular language, understanding of global geography, and so on. But most countries also want children to understand their own history. And as you correctly point out, there isn't a lot of history of a lot of countries in these public data sets. And I think that's a fixable problem. And for example, the Indian government could cooperate with the people who are developing these technologies. But it's clear that this is not from the corporate point of view. This is not where the money is, right? The money, coming back to your point about emotional intelligence, the money is in using the AI's emotional intelligence to manipulate people to buy things, right? And that's how a lot of companies are seeing this in terms of monetization, or using the AI in the operations of companies to gain efficiency, sometimes at the expense of employment of humans. And this would be more of a long-term investment, which it's in the interest of the governments of the countries to facilitate, but who is going to pay for it?
That's why I'm so happy that people like Lauren are on the table, right? Yeah. Because they're using data for public good. Because without that, Lauren, aren't we looking at a sort of data imperialism? Or, where a certain kind of information or history is taught to children all over the world?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the risk of that. I think the good news is that we are I don't know how many years into the technology revolution we are, because I'm not sure where we would start that. But we're, countries around the world, every country has recognized the need to invest in technology and digital literacy, and to varying degrees of success. India has certainly invested and been very successful. And I do think that there are enough folks out there that are working in that intersection of social impact and technology, where people are saying, hold on a second, it might be that the money's not there, but we have ways to go and address these. Maybe not at the scale we need to, maybe not at the depth we need to right now, but let's not miss the opportunity to try. If we don't try, we're never going to get there. And so we have to start now. And I think one of the things that's been encouraging since the letter over the last year, as AI has really come into, the general discourse around the world, is a real recognition of, this is not one of those things that we're going to wait till it's done and then we'll figure out how to use it. We have to be part, from the civil society perspective, part of the conversation from the very beginning. And some of the deficiencies that we know exist now, like around data equity, we've got to start to address right now.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a fundamental problem that the data simply doesn't exist. For many languages, the total amount of written text in any form, anything, whether it's clay tablets or papyrus or vellum or paper or digital, just the total amount of written text is not big enough to train really high quality language models. And there's often enough text so that that translation becomes possible. And then you can translate a lot of the English text into that language, and then you've got an augmented data set, which eventually creates a language model of high enough quality with a bit of iteration. But unfortunately, a lot of that English text is incorporating, a Western or Anglo-Saxon perspective on the world. So it's actually an open question. How do you bootstrap to get to a large enough corpus to have a high quality language model in a specific language without incorporating too much of the Anglo-Saxon perspective at the same time?
Right.
So you need some kind of counter training. And I would also say, I mean, this might be idealistic. I grew up in England. I got very much an English perspective on history and the glories of the British Empire and so on. And people in every country get a quite nationalistic perspective that glosses over the evils of their own history and emphasizes the injustices done to them and so on. Might be a good thing if there were actually sort of a more neutral global perspective on history. What are the civilizations that have existed? When and where did they exist? How did they interact? What were the flows of people, of information, of technology, and so on? I think almost all countries lack that perspective, and it would be healthy to have it, I think.